The government or any group, organization does not have any rights. Let's be very clear about it. Rights are a concept which pertains and can pertain only to the individual. And what is the base of rights? There is really only one right, but it is so fundamental that all other rights are merely derivatives and restatements of the same basic right. That right is the right of a man to his own life. To begin with, a right, let's define that, is a moral concept which defines and sanctions a man's freedom of action in an individual, in a social context. A right is a social moral concept. It pertains to what is right, what is good for men to do in relation to other men. On a desert island, you would still need morality, but you wouldn't need rights, because there would be no one there to infringe your freedom of action. It is in a society that the question of rights arises, and the basic issue there is, does one man have the right to dispose of the life of another? The basic right that has to be respected and defined in a social context is the ownership, the property, if you will, of a man's right, own life. And once you have established that a man is the owner of his own life, that he has a right to live, that his life is his to dispose of and does not belong to anyone else, you have the base from which all other rights are to be derived. If a man has a right to his own life, then he has a right to take all those actions which are necessary by his nature as man, as a rational being, to sustain and protect his own life. And if it is a right, then it is equally applicable to all individuals, to all human beings. In order to prove that a certain action is in fact a right, you have to prove that it is required by man's nature. You would have to base it on the nature of man as he exists. If so, then it is equally applicable to all other men. And therefore the first issue to be observed very carefully in deciding what is or is not properly a right is the issue of, does the claimed right apply equally to all men or not? If it does not, then it cannot be a right. For instance, an example of it. When some men today assert economic rights, so-called, when they claim that they are entitled to the unearned support of other men, when men claim that they are entitled to a minimum sustenance to be provided by others, this is obviously a denial of the concept of rights. Because in order to provide unearned sustenance to one man, you would have to exact slave labor from another man. And you cannot claim the right to infringe the rights of one man in favor of another. That is denying the concept of rights. Nothing which infringes some man's rights for the benefits of others can, in logic and in morality, be claimed to be a right. A right has to apply on equal terms, that is, as the same principle to every member of the human race. Well, first let's define how can rights be infringed. The basic way in which one man can infringe the rights of another is by the use of physical force or compulsion. Anything which you force a man to do without his voluntary choice and consent is an infringement of his rights. Therefore, what the government is required to protect men from is the use of physical violence. The government has to be an arbiter who settles disputes among men according to objective principles in order to prevent them from resorting to violence. And in case of crime or foreign attack, it is the government's duty to protect a man from the aggressors who are using physical force against him. Those are the basic functions of a government and the way in which a government protects individual rights.